he is in the same country as one of his kids, but there's no plans to see old mate Harry, are there?
Exactly the way they are. That his son is a and they don't get along anymore, even though the dad is actually very sweet.
The year is 2026, and something seismic has just happened inside the walls of Buckingham Palace. Not a coronation, not a royal wedding, not even a death. Something far more calculated, far more permanent, and in many ways, far more devastating than any of those events could ever be. The palace has just pulled back the curtain on a truth that Prince Harry has reportedly been dreading for years. And the revelation doesn't just affect him. It reaches all the way down to his children. Two young kids growing up in a California mansion who may be about to discover that the titles they were born into are no longer theirs to claim. Archie Lilibet, names that once carried the weight of crowns and centuries of royal history. But are they still royal? Are they still who the world was told they are? And more importantly, did the palace plan this all along? Because here's what nobody is saying out loud. The evidence suggests this wasn't reactive. This was strategic. Every document filed, every law quietly amended, every silence carefully maintained. It was all moving toward one moment. This moment. And Prince Harry, for all his memoirs and documentaries and tell-all interviews, may have never seen it coming. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you are going to understand exactly how the identity of Archie and Lilibet was always something the crown held in its hand, and why 2026 is the year they finally chose to open that fist. The question nobody was asking. Let's start with the question that has been quietly circling royal watchers for years, the one that most mainstream media has been too polite or too cautious to ask directly. Who legally and officially are Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor and Lilibet Diana Mountbatten Windsor? Before you roll your eyes and say, obviously they are Prince Harry's children, stop, because that's exactly the surface-level answer the palace has been content to let the world accept while it worked on something far more complex underneath. The identity of a royal child isn't just biological, it's institutional, it's legal, it's ecclesiastical, it's historical. And on every single one of those levels, questions have been building like storm clouds over the Sussex household for years. Think about this carefully. Archie was born in May 2019 in London. He was not immediately given a prince's title, a deliberate and deeply controversial choice at the time. Many assumed it was Harry and Meghan's decision to shield him from the relentless pressures of royal life. But was it really their decision? Or was it the opening move in a much longer, much colder game? And Lilibet, born in June 2021 in Santa Barbara, California, thousands of miles from British soil, outside the jurisdiction of the Crown's medical and legal establishments, outside the formal reach of the Church of England. From the very moment of her birth, she existed in a category the monarchy had never quite had to deal with before. A child with a claim to royal identity who was, in nearly every practical sense, more Californian than British. These are the fault lines the palace has been watching, and in 2026, it is pressing on all of them simultaneously. The legal trap laid in 1917. To understand what's happening now, you have to go back over 100 years, because the weapon being used against Archie and Lilibet wasn't invented in 2026. It was sitting in a drawer since 1917, perfectly preserved, just waiting to be picked up by the right hand at the right moment. That year, King George V, facing a monarchy under enormous political pressure during World War I, with a royal family whose German-sounding name was becoming a public relations liability, issued what is known as letters patent. This was a formal royal decree that defined, with precise legal language, who in the royal family was entitled to carry the title of prince or princess. The intent was clear and strategic: prevent the royal family from expanding into an unwieldy mass of titled relatives who diluted the prestige of the crown. It was about quality control. Royal identity, the decree made plain, wasn't simply a matter of blood. It was a matter of institutional recognition. For most of the 20th century, this document sat quietly in the archives, occasionally updated, largely uncontested, doing its job without drama. Until now. Because as spring 2026 arrives, reports are surfacing that a new revision to those original letters patent is being fast-tracked. And this revision isn't routine, it's targeted. The proposed change would tie royal title eligibility to a UK domicile requirement. In plain English, if you don't live in Britain, if you don't participate in the life of the nation, your title is no longer a guaranteed birthright. It becomes conditional, performative, and ultimately, revocable. For Archie and Lilibet, growing up in their Montecito mansion in California, this proposed change is nothing short of a legal earthquake. They don't live in the UK. They don't attend school in the UK. They have no public royal duties anywhere in the United Kingdom. And under this potential revision, that fact alone could strip them of the very titles that define their identities in the eyes of the world. Here's the question you need to sit with. Is this about protecting an ancient institution? Or is this a very modern, very deliberate act of targeted exclusion aimed squarely at one family? Because the timing is not coincidental. The timing is everything. The as ever scandal, where patience snapped. Now we need to talk about the specific moment that insiders point to as the final trigger. The moment the palace reportedly decided that patience was no longer a virtue, it was a liability. And this moment didn't happen in a courtroom or a parliamentary chamber. It happened in a product launch. In early 2026, Meghan Markle rebranded her lifestyle venture under the name As Ever. The rebrand was immediately controversial, sparking legal challenges from smaller businesses with similar branding. But the controversy that hit closest to the palace had nothing to do with trademark law, at least not initially. It had everything to do with a candle collection. Among the products in the As Ever launch were signature candles, each assigned a number. Number 506, corresponding to Archie's birth date of May 6th. Number 64, corresponding to Lilibet's birth date of June 4th. On the surface, a touching personal detail, a mother weaving her children into her work. But inside Buckingham Palace, the reaction was reportedly incandescent. Why? Because those numbers weren't just dates. They were the encoded royal identities of the king's grandchildren. And by attaching those identities to a commercial product, a luxury candle sold for profit, the palace believed Meghan had crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. She had monetized the royal lineage of Prince Harry's children. She had taken the prestige attached to the titles Prince and Princess, titles that carry the weight of 1,000 years of British history, and used that prestige to sell lifestyle goods to wealthy consumers. Ask yourself honestly, if you were King Charles, watching your grandchildren's identities reduced to product codes on a candle label, how would you feel? This wasn't just an offense to royal dignity. In the palace's view, it was a fundamental desecration of something sacred. A royal title is not a trademark. It is not a marketing asset. It is a designation of service and duty to a sovereign nation. And the Sussex household had demonstrated, once and for all, that it viewed the titles as neither. The candle controversy gave the crown the moral and political justification it had been methodically building toward. Every trademark application, every streaming deal, every podcast that leveraged royal connections while simultaneously attacking the institution behind them, it all pointed to the same pattern. The titles weren't being honored, they were being extracted, and the palace was finally ready to respond. The paperwork paradox. The questions that won't go away. But the branding controversy, as explosive as it was, is only one layer of this story. Because underneath the headlines about candles and trademarks, there are questions about official paperwork that have been quietly haunting the Sussex family story since the very beginning. And the palace is now reportedly using those questions as leverage. Go back to 2019. Archie's birth should have been a moment of uncomplicated national celebration. A new royal baby, born to the most watched couple on Earth. But almost immediately, irregularities in the official documentation created ripples of speculation that have never fully subsided. The birth certificate was altered. Meghan's legal name was initially replaced with her royal title, then subsequently changed back, a procedural inconsistency that, in any other context, might seem trivial. In the context of royal record-keeping, where precision is not a preference but a constitutional imperative, it was treated as a red flag. And then there is Lilibet. born in Santa Barbara in June 2021, born outside the United Kingdom, born outside the formal oversight structures, medical, legal, and ecclesiastical, that have historically governed royal births for centuries. A royal birth was never intended to be simply a private family matter. It was a semi-public institutional event, witnessed and formally verified according to protocols designed to protect the integrity of the line of succession. These weren't arbitrary traditions. They existed because in a monarchy built on bloodline, verification is everything. It is constitutional bedrock. With Lilibet's California birth, every single one of those safeguards was absent. Geography made it impossible. But the absence created what royal insiders are now describing as a legitimacy gap, a space in the official record where the Crown's verification processes should have occurred and did not. And according to sources, that gap has never been formally addressed or closed. Here is the uncomfortable question that follows. In the strict technical framework of succession law and royal protocol, what does it mean for a child's royal standing when the documentation surrounding their birth does not conform to the standards the institution has always required? The palace has not answered that question publicly, but their silence, as we will see, is itself an answer. In the world of the monarchy, silence is not indifference. Silence is a strategy. The baptism gap, invisible in the annals of the Crown. If the paperwork questions represent the legal dimension of this story, the baptism issue represents something even more fundamental, the spiritual and ceremonial dimension. And for an institution constitutionally bound to the Church of England, this dimension carries weight that is difficult to overstate. Every royal child before Lilibet, from Prince William down to Prince Louis, underwent a formal baptism that was officially recorded and recognized by the Church of England. This wasn't simply a matter of religious preference. It was a formal act of institutional incorporation, a binding of the child to the national church, to the spiritual identity of the British state, to the ceremonial lineage stretching back through centuries. It was how a royal child was officially welcomed, not just into a family, but into an institution that defines itself partly through its religious continuity. When Harry and Meghan chose to hold Lilibet's baptism in California, a private, deeply personal ceremony with close friends, including Tyler Perry, accompanied by a gospel choir, they made a choice that was meaningful and authentic to them. No one would question their right to celebrate the moment however they chose. But the Church of England never formally recognized that ceremony. No official entry was made in the ecclesiastical archives. In the eyes of the institution, Lilibet was never formally brought into the fold. The chilling implication is this. In the palace's operational framework, incomplete means invalid, not cruel, not spiteful, simply procedurally definitive. Lilibet exists in Montecito. She does not exist in the ceremonial records upon which royal history is constructed. She is celebrated in California and invisible in the annals of the Crown. Does that strike you as fair? Perhaps not, but fairness was never the operating principle of a millennium-old institution. Protocol is, precedent is, and on both counts, the palace holds every inch of the ground. The Andrew precedent. The nuclear playbook is open. Now we arrive at what may be the most strategically revealing element of this entire story. Because the palace didn't just theorize in 2026 that it could strip royal identity from a family member. It proved it, definitively, publicly, without apology. Prince Andrew, Duke of York, son of Queen Elizabeth II, brother of King Charles III, a man who spent decades as a senior working royal. In late 2025, the king issued letters patent stripping Andrew of his Royal Highness style and his prince title. It was a historic act, and it sent a message that reverberated far beyond Andrew's specific circumstances. The message was this: the Crown has the power and the resolve to edit its own roster. No one is untouchable. No title is immune. The institution's survival supersedes any individual's claim to belonging. Simultaneously, the British Parliament has been actively debating legislation that would formalize the legal removal of individuals from the line of succession, adding a parliamentary layer to what has historically been a purely royal prerogative. Public support for all of it is overwhelming. The British public, exhausted by years of royal drama, is demanding a leaner, more disciplined institution, and politicians are listening. For Harry's children, the implications couldn't be more stark. If Andrew, son of a queen, decades of royal service behind him, can be stripped of his titles and edited out of the succession, what argument remains for preserving the royal standing of two children who have never performed a single public duty, who have no formal presence in the UK, and whose parents have spent years publicly attacking the institution whose name those children carry? The answer is no argument, none that would survive contact with the current political and public climate. The Andrew precedent didn't just demonstrate that this could be done, it demonstrated that the public would applaud it, and it handed Prince William, the future king, the exact template he has been waiting for. William's cold calculation. We cannot tell this story without confronting what is reportedly the true emotional and strategic engine driving all of it. King Charles holds the formal power, but it is William who is said to be the architect of the most aggressive elements of this exclusion, the man who sees what needs to be done and has the patience, the will, and the institutional authority in waiting to make it happen. The relationship between the brothers is, by every credible account, beyond repair in 2026. This is not a warm but strained dynamic. This is something colder, more deliberate, and more final. William has reportedly made his peace with the loss of the brother he once knew and channeled his grief into something institutional, a determined, meticulous effort to ensure that when he takes the throne, he inherits a monarchy that is clean, focused, and completely free of Sussex-shaped complications. He has not forgotten Spare, the memoir that aired intimate family grievances in extraordinary, damaging detail. He has not forgotten the Netflix documentaries, the Oprah interview, the years of media positioning that each, in his view, chipped away at the dignity of an institution to which he has devoted his entire life. William's memory is long. His patience, once exhausted, does not renew itself. His stated position regarding Archie and Lilibet is one of total institutional exclusion. When he becomes king, there will be no titles, no roles, no connection to the working apparatus of the crown for the Sussex children. Not out of cruelty, out of clarity. A functional monarchy requires full commitment. Half membership is not an option. You serve, or you step aside entirely. In spring 2026, William and Kate were appointed as guardians of royal warrants, a significant role giving them substantial authority over which brands and businesses receive the privilege of association with the crown. The contrast with Meghan's brand situation could not be sharper or more deliberate. While Kate stewards the monarchy's official commercial relationships with global prestige, Meghan is locked in trademark disputes over candles and jam. The power differential is absolute, and William constructed it that way. The Australia tour, humiliation on the world stage. Everything we have discussed, the legal maneuvers, the paperwork questions, the title mechanics, William's strategic vision, it all crystallized into a single, globally visible moment during the 2026 Australia tour. Harry and Meghan traveled to Australia in what many observers read as a bid for continued relevance, a quasi-royal tour that would remind the world of their global reach and the public affection they once genuinely commanded. They arrived in Sydney expecting something close to the reception they received in 2018, when they were the luminous young couple who seemed to represent everything modern and compelling about the British monarchy. They were unprepared for what they actually found. Protesters in both Melbourne and Sydney turned out with signs that asked a question both simple and devastating. Who are you representing? It was a question the palace had already answered by ensuring the children's official status was stripped before the tour began. The Crown had communicated its position to the Australian government, which responded accordingly. There was no state-level security commensurate with a working royal visit. There was no diplomatic red carpet. There was no official governmental recognition of the tour as anything other than what the palace had classified it as, a private visit by private citizens. Archie and Lilibet were not received as royal guests. They were received as the children of visiting VIPs, notable by association, but carrying no institutional weight. For Harry, the humiliation was visceral and total. This was a man raised on royal tours who grew up understanding that the crown's presence commanded a specific, irreplaceable form of respect that no amount of celebrity could replicate. And in Sydney in 2026, that respect was entirely, deliberately absent. The most telling detail wasn't the protesters or the missing security protocols. It was the public reaction, or the lack of one. The crowds that gathered were curious, not reverent. The coverage was polite, not adoring. The world had moved on, and the palace had made quiet, strategic arrangements to ensure that it had. The financial severance. The vault closes. For all the symbolic weight of stripped titles and humbled tours, the most concrete and enduring impact of 2026 may be financial. Because beyond what Archie and Lilibet are called, there is the question of what they will one day inherit. And the answer, increasingly, appears to be far less than anyone once assumed. There was a broadly held assumption, never formally confirmed but widely accepted, that Harry's children would eventually be beneficiaries of the vast private wealth associated with the Duchy of Cornwall and the personal estates of the late Queen. The financial scale is staggering. The Duchy of Cornwall alone represents an estate worth over £1 billion, passing to the Prince of Wales with each new generation. But in the early months of 2026, insiders began reporting on a sovereign trust restructuring, a legal reorganization of royal wealth administration that specifically excludes non-working royals residing permanently outside the United Kingdom. The language is technical, the details not publicly confirmed, but the implication is unmistakable. If your life is built around Netflix deals and lifestyle branding in Montecito rather than royal service in London, the generational wealth of the British Crown is no longer flowing in your direction. For Archie and Lilibet, this means that the specific, irreplaceable privilege of royal inheritance, tied not just to money, but to land, history, and centuries of institutional continuity, is being systematically removed from their future. The Crown's message, delivered in the dry language of trust law, is devastatingly clear. The benefits of the institution require the performance of the institution's duties. No service, no inheritance. The vault is closed. The Councillor of State removal, the final administrative erasure. The last piece of this puzzle arrived as the 2026 parliamentary session opened. In a move that many outside royal circles would have dismissed as dry bureaucratic housekeeping, Harry was officially removed from the list of Councillors of State. Councillors of State are the individuals legally empowered to perform certain royal functions if the monarch is incapacitated or abroad. It is a list composed of senior royals, people whose proximity to the throne, in both bloodline and institutional standing, qualifies them to act on the Crown's behalf in an emergency. Being on that list is a formal declaration of institutional trust. It means the Crown regards you as part of the functioning machinery of the state. Being removed means the opposite. It is the institution formally declaring that you are no longer part of that machinery. And the downstream consequence for Archie and Lilibet is profound and permanent. If their father has been officially excised from the institutional framework of the British state, what path remains, legally, procedurally, or practically, for them to ever play any role within it? The circle is tightening. The succession is being drawn smaller, cleaner, more deliberate with every passing month. Every time it contracts, Archie and Lilibet find themselves further outside it. This wasn't done in anger. It wasn't announced with fanfare. It was done quietly, efficiently, with the calm assurance of an institution that has been executing these kinds of decisions for 1,000 years and has never once lost sleep over the paperwork. The dossier in the shadows. And then there are the stories that haven't fully surfaced yet, the ones circulating in circles close to the palace, suggesting that the current moves are not simply reactive. They are the culmination of years of patient, deliberate documentation. There are reports that the palace holds detailed records of how the Sussex network was allegedly used to leverage the children's royal status for commercial and reputational purposes long before the Ever brand ever launched, going back, in some accounts, to the earliest years of the Sussex brand's formation. In this version of events, the monetization of Archie and Lilibet's royal identities didn't begin with candles in 2026. It began almost from the moment they were born, and the palace, patient as only a 1,000-year-old institution can afford to be, was cataloging every step. The King and William reportedly don't view the current situation as merely the result of poor decisions made in California. They view it as the end result of a sustained, years-long effort to construct what one insider described as a rival court, an alternative royal operation based in America, generating its own commercial ecosystem on the foundation of titles and connections that existed solely because of the Crown. And the Crown's response to that perceived challenge has been methodical and total, the systematic removal of every advantage that rival court depended upon, one by one. The titles, the institutional standing, the succession position, the inheritance, the ceremonial recognition, each building block of the Sussex brand's legitimacy, quietly dismantled. What this means for Archie and Lilibet. Let's bring this back to the two people at the center of all of it, because it would be easy and wrong to let them disappear into the legal and political machinery that surrounds their story. Archie Harrison is approaching his 7th birthday in 2026. By every account, he is a bright, happy child, growing up surrounded by a family that loves him. He knows he has a grandfather who is a king. He knows his family name carries weight. What he cannot yet understand is that the question of who he officially is, in the eyes of that family, that history, that institution, is being resolved in legal chambers and parliamentary debates thousands of miles from the only home he has ever known. He had no voice in the choices that shaped his situation. He had no vote on the question of which world he belonged to. Lilibet Diana is younger still, born in America, named for a great-grandmother whose portrait hangs in palaces she has barely visited. She carries one of the most historically loaded names in the royal family's modern history, attached to a royal identity that has been contested practically since the moment of her birth. The baptism questions, the documentation gaps, the California jurisdiction issues, these abstract institutional concerns orbit around a small girl who had no agency in any of it. What is happening is not, in the palace's framing, about punishing children. It is about the integrity of an institution that predates every living person in this story and will, almost certainly, outlast all of them. But the human cost is real, regardless of the institutional framing. Two children are going to grow up knowing that the world into which they were born decided, before they were old enough to speak, that they didn't fully belong to it. The verdict: the door is closing. So what is the final shape of the story? In 2026, the palace has essentially completed the legal and institutional exclusion of the Sussex family from the functional apparatus of the British monarchy. The tools have been varied: letters, patent revisions targeting domicile requirements, Councillor of State removal, sovereign trust restructuring, the Andrew precedent, ecclesiastical non-recognition of California ceremonies. Each individually might be framed as routine institutional management. Together, they constitute something unmistakable, a coordinated, deliberate campaign to redefine who Archie and Lilibet are, or more precisely, to establish with finality what they are not. They are not working royals. They are not UK-domiciled title holders. They are not formally recognized in the Church of England's ceremonial records. They are not part of the institutional succession framework in any meaningful sense. They are not the intended beneficiaries of royal wealth. What they are is two children with a historic surname, a complicated legacy, and parents who made a bet on a different kind of life, and are now experiencing the full, irreversible cost of that bet. For Prince Harry, the dawning realization, if those close to him are to be believed, is that he fundamentally misunderstood the nature of what he was walking away from. He appears to have believed he could take his children to California, build something new, and the royal identity would travel with them like personal property. He is learning in real time and in public that it doesn't work that way. The crown doesn't follow anyone. It anchors in London. Walk away from it, and it lets you go. And when you look back, it has already moved on without you. And that may be the most brutal truth of all, because Harry didn't just walk away from a job. He walked away from a system that had been building legal and institutional scaffolding around his children's identities since before they were born. Every protocol he bypassed, every tradition he dismissed as outdated, every palace directive he ignored in the name of authenticity. Each one was quietly catalogued, not as personal grievances, as institutional records. The monarchy doesn't get angry, it gets precise. It notes every deviation, files every irregularity, and waits. It has been waiting for a very long time. And now, the waiting is over. What makes this moment so historically significant is not just what is being taken away. It's what it reveals about the nature of royal identity itself. It was never truly owned by the individuals who carried it. It was always on loan from the institution. The crown grants, the crown can revoke. And the Sussex family, in their determination to prove they could exist independently of that institution, may have inadvertently handed the crown the clearest possible justification for reclaiming everything it once gave. The monarchy is moving forward. William is preparing for his own era with the focused clarity of a man who has decided exactly what kind of king he intends to be. Lean, duty-centered, unencumbered by celebrity tangents. In that future, there is no Sussex branch, there is no Montecito court, there are no part-time princes, there is the crown and its servants, and everyone else. Archie and Lilibet, as of 2026, are firmly in the column of everyone else. The names once destined for gold leaf in the pages of royal history are being written out, not with rage, not with ceremony, just with a pen, a legal document, and the cold confidence of an institution that has been doing this for 1,000 years and has never once lost its nerve. And the question that will follow this story for decades to come, the one Harry will have to answer to his children one day, is whether he saw this coming, or whether the truth is harder than that he never did. Now I want to hear from you. Do you believe the palace has gone too far in moving against Harry's children? 2 kids who made no choices in any of this? Or do you think this was the inevitable logical consequence of the path Harry and Meghan chose? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, because this conversation is far from finished. And if this video gave you a deeper understanding of the legal and institutional machinery running beneath the royal family's surface, the previous video is essential viewing. It goes back to the Toronto years, to the elite social networks and power structures that shaped this entire story long before Harry and Meghan ever made it to the altar. The dots connect in ways that will completely reframe everything you've just watched. It's there right now, waiting for you. Click it, watch it, and then tell me, do you think any part of this can still be reversed? Or is the door permanently, irreversibly closed? The Crown has spoken, but the story isn't finished yet.